G'day Dons fans and welcome to Don the Stat. We're officially 26 days out from Essendon's round one clash with Hawthorn, and today the countdown rolls on with Guernsey number 26, a jumper that spans more than a century of Essendon football and has been worn by captains, key position pillars and some serious goal kickers. The number first appeared in the early VFL years, worn by Billy Harvey in 9 games in 1912. It was Harvey's one and only season of senior football. He would sadly lose his life at the age of 25 in action in World War One in 1917. A rotating cast of players through the 1910s and 20s wore the number before settling into its first long-term home with Ted Fryer. Fryer wore Guernsey number 26 from 1929 to 1937, playing 124 games and kicking an extraordinary 372 goals. His output places him third all-time for goals kicked in Guernsey number 26 across VFL AFL history, making him one of the most prolific forwards ever associated with the number. However, today I'm joined by someone who wore the numbers 26 in 51 games between 1975 and 1981. Robert Shaw, welcome back to Don the Start.
Thanks for inviting me, Warshy. And I've only researched the people that we were talking about that people will recognise. But that was a sad story about the first wearer of 26, wasn't it?
It was.
He didn't come home from World War One.
No, that's right. It was sort of 5 years after his football career at Essendon finished, and of course, there's not a lot of information on him, unfortunately. But yeah, sadly lost his life in Belgium on the Western Front.
Yeah. Well, as we spoke about, Warshy, I've tried to connect 4 or 5 players with interesting stories. Not so much related to how far they could kick, how many goals, how many games, but the interesting connection between 4 or 5 of us is some stories there that not many people would have heard about.
Let's get into it, mate. I'm keen to listen.
Yeah, you might have detected a few, Walshy, but you're a hard man to beat. But let's start with number 26, Bob Syme, right? 6'2", nearly 90 kilo, like the replica of the modern ruck rover today. That would be a perfect size. He was tough, he was fiery, and he, besides being a very good player in the 49 and 50 premierships, Jonathan, his main role was to protect 2 of Essendon's great players in Dick Reynolds and Bill Hutchison. So you had those 2 as the Rovers. Swampy, as his nickname was, Bob Swampy Syme, he was the enforcer. And you might say, well, he had to look after John Coleman too, but folklore tells us that and it's etched in history when Coleman was reported and missed the 51 grand final. Coleman was a very tough player and could look after himself. So that was Bob's main role, and he did it magnificently and played critical roles in those premierships.
Yeah, and I
I,
was
I,
having a look too. He stayed around the club, didn't he? He was coached the reserves in the 70s, and he was on the committee in the 80s as well
yeah,
during the back-to-back flag. So he's had his fingerprint on a lot of Essendon history.
and he had a fingerprint on me too, because when I came as a 17-year-old, I played half the year in the under 19s and half the year in the seconds. My under 19 coach was a premiership player from the 40s in Alan Thor. He had the unfortunate nickname of Basher. So I had Alan Basher Thor, I had Bob Swampy Syme, and our senior coach was Ded Studnam.
There you
So
go.
what a welcome to the Essendon Football Club and VFL football. Uh, 3 of the hardest, toughest competitors that you would want to meet. And Swampy was an immaculate dresser. Like he dressed like those rock stars from the 60s walking down Carnaby Street in London. He was unbelievable. The shoes, the pants were ironed, but he had a little gimmick, Swampy, that probably wouldn't go down that well these days. Had a big long coat with a furry collar, big deep pockets. So he's coaching you, freezing cold, and every game Bob would pull out the brown paper bag Now, the brown paper bag, as you know, Walshy, used to be filled with money. This was
Yep.
filled with a bottle of Stone's green ginger wine that
There you
Swampy
go.
would pass around the group, and you had to take a swig before going back into the second quarter. So tough committeeman, another person that after football life made a great contribution to Essendon.
Yeah, that's brilliant, mate. And given that he was your reserves coach and I assume was still around the place when you made your league debut, was there a jumper presentation like we see these days, or did you just get the number given to you and away you go? How did that come about?
Well, I just received an invitation to go to the Crown Palladium for jumper presentation. Your internet connection is unstable.
I can hear you loud and clear, mate. So we're all good.
Good. Um, no, mine was handed to me by Des Tuddenham at a sit-down dinner, not even a dinner after training at Roslyn Court. Remember Roslyn Court,
Yeah, yeah,
Walshy,
yeah.
over
I've
the
been to a
back?
couple of weddings and
Yeah,
best and fairest nights and things there over the years.
yeah. Well, that was our jumper presentation in. It was 1973 actually. So that was so we've gone from Roslyn Court where your jumper was just handed to you and told don't lose it to the Crown Palladium and the Hall of Fame dinner in a month or so.
There you go. Well, before we move on completely from
Yeah.
Bob, he finished his career 98 games. You tweeted the other day about some of the Essendon greats who fell just short of the 100 game milestone. Well, there's another man who has his name etched in Essendon's history but didn't quite get there and kicked 55 goals across his career. I guess skipping
Hang
past,
on, mate. Who did I mention? Coleman 98,
yeah,
Syme the same
yeah,
98,
yeah,
and of course Leon Baker. It was
yeah.
either 82 or 86.
Yeah, it was
So
something in the 80s, wasn't it? Neil Danaher, I think, was the
yeah.
other one that you might
Anyway,
have mentioned.
oh Neil Danaher. Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, mate, you wore it for 51 games between 74 and 81. And we might elaborate on your story a little bit more at the end, but you then handed the jumper on to someone who I think most listeners would be well aware of, and that's Mark Thompson. What can you remember? And again, did you have anything to do with the decision for him to take your jumper, or is it just something again that happened when he came in?
No, when I got my jumper, as I said, I got it, and I just want to go back a bit. The person that wore my jumper before me was Paul Sproul, number 26.
Yep.
And the connection there is he's a Tasmanian boy, a Hobart boy, and he had a falling out with Des Tuddenham and went to Richmond, and as you would know, played one of the great ruck rover roles in the Richmond Premiership of 73 and 74.
Yep.
So there's a connection there. His ruck roving partner was Kevin Sheedy. There's another connection. So I received Paul Sproul's jumper, number 26, due to the Tasmanian connection.
Gotcha.
But I just want to give you another Tasmanian connection. People will remember this man because he's played a significant role in the history of Essendon. Not a great player, not a skilled player, and his name's Brian Donahue. Now, Brian was chairman of selectors during those halcyon days with Kevin. He was a long-serving board member, and he should be fondly remembered for starting the Hall of Fame and also that wonderful museum we had. So Brian also has a connection to Tasmania.
And
When he finished,
largely
yeah.
responsible for trying to keep Sheedy on the straight and narrow as well at various times over the years, wasn't
Oh, and the number of times that the board would move on Kevin, Brian played a significant role in. He was sort of the Graham Richmond.
Yep.
Graham. Oh, He just died, Graham Richardson,
Yep.
the parliamentarian, the number cruncher. So Brian was a great number cruncher, went to Scottsdale, never won a premiership. They won in 64 and 65. Brian played in the 66 Carnival. And the story goes that when he first arrived, the club rooms brought down. Now, Scottsdale's only 1,700 people in the northeast of Tasmania, one of the beautiful places, but a culturally magnificent football club, famous football club. So Brian organised all the players. The area is known for its cattle and its timber. So the players and Brian rebuilt their club rooms. And the year after they built it, they won the Premiership, and then they won it again in 65. And then Brian went coaching and then found himself back at Essendon. He had a year with Barry Davis, and then when Sheeds came along, as you quite rightly said, they had a fantastic connection, and it was a great combination. As in those days, Walsh, you would know, a lot of coaches had the old chairman of selectors.
Yep.
And they played a very, very important role.
Yep. There was another Tasmanian, well, there might have been more than one other, but there's one that comes to mind for me that wore number 26. Probably, I reckon you might have been working across at Freo at the time, but I'm putting you on the spot. Can you remember who that was?
Jason Laycock wore it for 1 year.
Yeah,
two. Yeah. And then went to number 27.
Yeah.
So Jason Laycock's another Tasmanian connection. Yeah. Yep. Well, and can I just finish before we go on to Bomber?
Yeah.
In the early, and I guess my thing's called the connection. Bob Wilson was a tough, strong centreman for Essendon, number 26, in the early 70s. Couldn't get a game, couldn't force his way in. Another Essendon number 26 that went to the Scottsdale Football Club. They were champions of Tasmania. They went through 1973 undefeated. And in those days, Jono, you had the club championship. So they went to Adelaide and played, I think it was East Perth. Remember the fight with Mal Brown and Carlton?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they went and played a 2-game series, South Australia, Victoria, Richmond, and in 1973, you won't get this trivia question, but it's another one. Bob Wilson won the premiership. They won the state premiership. And the best player on the ground in the 1970 Scottsdale premiership, state premiership, do you want to have a guess? No,
you tell me, mate. Go for it.
Kevin Egan.
Oh, there you go. Wow, what a connection.
Kevin Egan, who went down there as a fly-in player.
Yep.
And he was at the end, I think Kevin would have been 28, 29, and made a significant contribution. So between Donahue, Wilson, there's a great number 26, myself, Sprowley. There's a bit of a Tassie connection there, Jono. And of course, I'm sorry to digress. In 1982, I dislocated my shoulder and also did my knee. And I went into hospital to have my knee reconstructed, and I was only 26, and the surgeon woke me up in between the operation, which was quite extraordinary. He said, look, I can, and I'm all blurry and all that, and he said, your cruciate ligament is hanging by the best way I would describe it, a line, a fishing line. Oh, so wow. It's intact. So if you don't do any competitive sport, if you just become a walker, a few weights, that will re-heal itself over the course of your lifetime, and but you have to retire otherwise. And because he says it's a major operation, but it's still hanging in there. So that's when I went to Sheeds and I said, mate, I'm gone. I've had enough. And 83, I got employed by Kevin doing the old opposition analysis, and along came Mark Thompson and wore that jumper in the 84 and 85 Premiership and has gone on to be an Essendon all-time great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and then captained 1993, of course, as well. So three-time
Yeah,
Premiership player. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of the more modern era defining player, Bomber, really, isn't he? 202 games. Like you, had his fair share of injuries as well, particularly with the knees, but ended his
yeah.
career, yeah, a Premiership player. And yeah. Did you once you stopped playing, did you and do you now keep a bit of an eye on the guys that wear number 26? Does it still, bring you a bit of joy to see it out there on a
Yeah, I
weekend
was
running
really,
around?
and not for ego, but I remember we went out to watch my grandson at Auskick,
Yeah,
and two Essendon players turned up to run, like they go to clinics.
yep.
One was Ridley and one was Baldwin.
Oh yeah, of course.
And he was 26, and it was before he got his real bad injuries.
Yep.
And I walked over to him and I said to whoever, I'm going to introduce myself. And I walked over, and it was a very moving sort of moment. I said, excuse me, I don't want to interrupt. I'd like to introduce myself. And he said, I know who you are. He said, you wore number 26. I said, how would you know me? He said, well, when I got the jumper, I grabbed one of the Essendon High Mark book, whatever it is,
Yep.
and I read about the people that wore 26. And I said, well, that's so kind of you. Thank you. And I wish you all the best for your career. And I had fingers crossed. He had the potential to make it. Everything had to go right for him. But sadly, injuries took a toll. And moving on forward, when Archie May got the jumper, and his mum is Dermot's partner.
Yep.
I just sent Dermot Burton a text. I said, listen, you had Rodney Eade, number 26, at Hawthorn, and Peter Hudson, more Tasmanians. I said, can you make sure that this bloke, number 26, plays the Essendon way, not the Hawthorn way, please? And he said, I'll keep an eye on him for you. I said, thanks very much. And so, yeah, I haven't met him. But I did say to Dermot, if he runs into a bit of, it's pretty challenging. And I said, look, he's got his mum, he's got you, but if he ever needs a coffee, if things go bad or things go tough, I'll keep an eye on him. So that was great. And so that's basically the sum of it now. And that's the history except for Bomber handing it on to Chris Heffernan.
Yeah, well, that was the one.
Oh,
There's probably two that we should touch on, and Hef was the next one. You, of course, were involved in coaching him. He was the
yeah,
third of the three Premiership players in number 20. He played 123 games in those two stints, didn't he? Because he went to the D's. Unfortunately, I think
yeah.
for
Oh,
Essendon fans and coaches for a few years, but came back and at least got to finish his career at the club and in the number.
yeah.
And a very, very important and unheralded player in a very, very good team,
Oh,
wasn't he?
oh, Jonathan, like I know we can do a whole podcast on this, but if you ever didn't want to get rid of and I was there, I was in the room, and you were there.
Yep.
if there were three blokes you didn't want to get rid of, it'd been Heffernan, Blumfield, Carousella, for exactly the same reason you said. And I described them as fabric players. But Peter Jackson gave us no choice. Absolutely no choice. He mucked up the salary cap, and it was our job to go behind him and clean up the shit. And I know you've lived the saga. I lived that. And I didn't live the saga like a lot of people did on social media and all that, and the younger people. But I tell you what, there was no greater contribution to the demise of the Essendon Football Club over 20 years than that moment. Because it, Walshy, as you know, it eroded trust, it eroded faith, and it led to the demise of a great team. And as they say in the classics, the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah, and
unfortunately,
and for lots of reasons, wasn't it? You know, guys going into the prime of their career, and we'd lost draft picks shortly before it as well, so we weren't able to bring in young talent. It was it was a gut wrenching moment, but he was a really special footballer, Chris, and I don't think he gets the plaudits that maybe he should, because he was in a team that had so many good footballers, you know, Hurd and Lloyd and Mercedes and Fletcher and, you know, Carousella and these guys who were, you know, Hall of Famers really. And Hef was just someone that you could put his magnet on the board and know that he was going to give you an 8 out of 10, if not better, every week, and do the job that helped make those champions of our club in that era really, really good players.
I tell you how important they are. They were tall, you know, 6'1", athletic. And I can categorically say to you, Jono, we'd go, their magnets were in the 18 every week. But their strength was, we weren't sure where the magnet would go. They had the capacity to play centre, wing, Heffernan could go to half-back. And even one day, you'll remember the game, we played North Melbourne, Carousella tagged Peter Bell, totally foreign to him, and kicked 3 goals running off him. So we had these 3 blokes that if we had an injury or someone went down in this position, who do we turn to? Chris Heffernan, Justin Blumfield. Blake was a little bit more specific, midfield forward, whereas the other two just unbelievable. And as I said, Jonathan, that's history. But I'm really proud. I did my job. I wore that jumper, and when you go over it, I'm extremely proud to have worn a jumper that not through me, but has had connection and significance to the Essendon Footy Club. It's a good jumper.
But yeah, it certainly is. The other one too is of course Cale Hooker, who you probably didn't play enough games, Shorey, to get your own bottle of wine, but Cale's gone and done that. But from 2008 to 2021, he did it at both ends, didn't he? As a key defender in your old position, and then as a key forward, he kicked goals and helped some young players come through. So 219 games is an outstanding career. But I don't think you should ever undersell your own contribution to our club, Shorey. Not just before my time when you were playing, but helping those young guys come through in the 70s that ultimately went on to become Premiership players in the mid 80s. And then as an opposition analyst and later an assistant coach, and now as someone who keeps the history of our club with a lot of other contributors. I know you're far too modest to take too much credit for that, but I think there's a lot of younger fans who don't quite understand how special our club is because of where we've been on the ladder over the last 2 decades. But there's a lot of good stories and a lot of brilliant history. And I do like to say we are still a great club. We might not be the team that we want to be at the moment, but Essendon Football Club is still a great club with a great story to tell, and you're someone who plays a very important role in continuing to tell that story.
Thanks so much, Jono. It's been, you're right. You can lose games, but don't lose good people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, over the years, it's been a bit of a habit. So hope spring's eternal and 26 is upon us. There's some good signs, and hopefully we get to see that number 26 lead out of that forward pocket alongside Nate Caddy. Thanks, Jono, for having me.
My pleasure, Shorey. Thanks for coming on. Thanks again to Robert Shaw, who joined us for that chat about the Guernsey number 26 at the Essendon Football Club. Just to recap, milestone whereas in Guernsey number 26, we had Bob Sine, Paul Sproul, and that man Robert Shaw, who all played between 50 and 100 games. Ted Freyer and Chris Heffernan played 124 and 123 games respectively. And then Mark Bomber Thompson with 202 and Cale Hooker with 219 were the two that have played over 200 games in the number. The number, of course, is currently being worn by Archie May. I think Shorey alluded to the fact that he'll be presenting him his 2026 Guernsey at Jumper Presentation Night and Hall of Fame dinner in a little while. That's it for us for Guernsey number 26. It's a number that's been defined by elite goal kicking, leadership, premiership success, and of course the very special link to Donnerstadt itself through Robert Shaw. We'll be back tomorrow for day 25 and Guernsey number 25. If you want to be part of the countdown, please add your thoughts on our socials, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, as always, stay safe and go Dons.